This girl is about to marry into a rich family. Originally, this is a thing that people envy. But on the night of the wedding, the girl killed her whole husband's family. But she was one of the victims. You'll never believe the horror she went through on her wedding night. Grace is a poor girl from a poor family. But today, she's marrying into this rich family. It should be a happy day, but now she's nervous. Because there's something weird about this wedding. Like these three expressionless maids. And her aunt who was staring at her. Everything was making her uncomfortable. After a long day, she and her husband Alex came back to their room. They were just about to get ready for a break. Grace was terrified, but her aunt told them to get downstairs. It turns out that the family made their fortune from card games. So every time a new member joins the family, a game is played. Alex told Grace that it was just a simple casual game and that she shouldn't be nervous. Then they went to a huge dining room table. The father-in-law brought out an old box. He asked Grace to draw a card from the box. They could play whatever she drew. Grace drew a game we've all played before, hide and seek. But when Alex saw the card, her face changed instantly. Her father-in-law explained the rules of the game to Grace with a kind face. She could hide in the mansion wherever she wanted. They would start looking for her when they counted to 100 and would turn off all the surveillance devices. If she can hide until dawn, she wins. At first, Grace naively thought it was just a game. She dragged her wedding dress and started looking for hiding places with great joy. Finally, she hid in a food delivery elevator. But little did she know that her loving father-in-law was now handing out weapons to the family members. There were hunting rifles. There were tomahawks. There were bows and arrows. Each weapon was deadly. Then they stood in a line and started counting down. And the hunt was about to begin. At this moment, Alex was very sad. It turns out Grace had drawn the only dead card. Everyone in the family had to kill the new member. Meanwhile, Grace was hiding in the elevator and was getting impatient, so she went out. It's Alex. He was about to explain to Grace, but suddenly, a nanny barged in. The two of them hid under the bed, afraid to make a sound. Then a shot rang out and the nanny fell to the ground. It turned out that the second sister had been drinking before the game and mistook the nanny for Grace. The innocent babysitter died in this way. The people who came didn't care about her. They continued to discuss how to hunt Grace. And Grace, who was hiding, realized how dangerous she was. Alex calmed her down and told her to escape through the back door of the kitchen. He went to the control room and opened the locked door. Grace puts on her sneakers, rips off her wedding dress, and follows Alex's directions. But at the end she found two doors. But she didn't know which one led to the kitchen. She nervously pushed open one door, only to run into her aunt and uncle who were disposing of the body. Grace is about to run away when her sister comes out from behind and shoots her several times. But she missed and almost killed her father. Grace took advantage of the chaos and fled into a billiard room. She hid behind the door, shivering in fear. That's when her second brother pushed his way in. Grace thought she was done for. But he didn't kill her. Turns out he hadn't liked the game since he was a kid. And he was very close to the groom. So he gave Grace 10 seconds to escape. After Grace left, he called everyone. Everyone started to accuse the big sister of being a lousy shot and decided to let her try it with a bow and arrow. But then a nanny rushed in. Not surprisingly, the nanny was shot again. Meanwhile, Grace found a shotgun in the wall. Alex also opened the back door of the kitchen for her. Grace rushed to the kitchen with the gun and threatened the housekeeper who was guarding the kitchen to get out of the way. But she didn't realize the shotgun was just an ornament. In her desperation, Grace grabbed the kettle on the table and smashed it into the butler. Grace fled back to the small elevator. She tried to hide in it, but when it opened, a nanny was hiding inside. It turns out that the nanny was terrified to see her two companions dead. But when she learned that the person she wanted to kill was Grace, she immediately shouted to report it to the people. But she accidentally pressed the start switch. She was caught in the elevator and cut in half. On the other hand, the father rushed into the surveillance room, knocked Alex out, and tied him up. Meanwhile, Grace climbed out the window and heard the family's secret. It turns out that the reason why the family is so rich is because of the contract with the devil. Grace drew the dead card in the contract. Then the family members had to sacrifice her before dawn, or the whole family would be destroyed. Grace was scared out of her wits after hearing that. She jumped down from the third floor and ran away. She had only one thing on her mind, and that was to survive. But suddenly there was a light behind her. She rushed into a nearby sheep shed. But the light came with her. She did not dare to make a sound. But when she got closer, she saw that it was the sister's son. She had just let her guard down when the boy raised his pistol and shot Grace right through the right hand. Grace was devastated. She punched the boy in anger and knocked him out. But just as she was about to bend down to pick up the flashlight, a goat came charging out. Grace was scared and backed up, and she fell into a cellar. And inside the cellar, there were decomposing bodies. Apparently, Grace was not the only one who had drawn the death card. She climbed up the ladder with great difficulty, but the ladder suddenly broke. She could only hold onto the exit with one hand. She was about to lose her grip. She pulled her hand out with severe pain. Then, after tearing her wedding dress and making a simple bandage, she ran wildly and finally found the door of the mansion. She broke a loose fence as hard as she could and started to burrow her way out. The iron spikes slipped through her body, but she couldn't care less. Finally, she escaped, but she didn't have long to run before the butler caught up with her in his car. He tackled Grace to the ground, but the butler was careless. Grace caught herself and shot the butler's gun, strangled him with a rope, and knocked him out. Then she got into his car and called the police, but to her surprise, the car had been tampered with before. Once the police were called, the car was automatically locked. Grace was trapped in the car. Soon the butler caught up with her, and he broke the glass. She used a tranquilizer gun to knock Grace out. When she woke up, she was tied up on a sacrifice. The crowd took a sip of holy water and began to prepare for the sacrifice. When the father-in-law raised his knife and was about to stab her, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. It turned out that the second brother had poisoned the holy water. She saved Grace and took her with her to escape. But the second brother's wife had lost her humanity and shot her husband directly. Seeing her savior killed, Grace exploded. She rushed up and grabbed the gun and killed her sister-in-law. Her father-in-law came to stop her, but she was knocked out. The mother-in-law tried to attack Grace, but she was smashed to pieces. Alex, who was trapped, escaped and saw that his parents and brothers were all killed. And he realized that Grace could no longer be with him. So he stopped thinking about love and kidnapped Grace. The crowd pinned Grace to the table. This time Alex raised the knife himself, stabbed down, but it missed and hit Grace's shoulder. Grace pulled out the knife and dodged to the side. But just then, the group realized that it was dawn. They hadn't been able to kill Grace before dawn. The curse of the family's destruction was about to come true. The crowd panicked. They were hiding from the sun's rays, but nothing happened. Seeing what Grace had become, they didn't intend to let her go. The aunt raised her axe and slashed at Grace. The curse was fulfilled. One by one, the members of the family exploded as the music began to play. This was their punishment for not fulfilling the devil's pact. In the end, only Grace and Alex were left. Grace removed the diamond ring from her hand and said with disappointment, "We get divorced." Then he was also exploded. In the end, Grace walked out of the so-called luxury house. And yesterday's wedding has become today's funeral. Who can imagine what she went through this night?